Hello, dear friend. This is the first episode of Resonance Garden, where beautiful conversations bloom. At the Resonance Path Institute, we are cultivating a community of practice where people actively explore the frontier of conscious evolution, participating in birthing a new culture that is life generative, a new culture that embraces wholeness. My very first guest is my dear friend, Helen Lowe. She is a guide, a facilitator who artfully empowers people to engage in the ever unfolding mystery of being alive in a joyful and a creative way. Our conversation started with this theme to explore how to integrate mindfulness practice with daily life. And you will see as our beautiful conversation organically unfolds, it leads us to places where we didn't expect at the beginning. You will also see that in my excitement to launch the very first episode, I forgot to ask Helen to introduce herself until several minutes in the conversation. And I decided to keep this mistake. As you will see that both Helen and I choose to engage life as an ongoing process of art making. And in this process, I'm going to cultivate a radical acceptance of what is. And this process is not so much about good and bad, right and wrong, but more about what is emerging, what is freshly bubbling, and what is alive. With that, I welcome you to Resonance Garden and enjoy our conversation. Helen, I invited you to come forward to have a conversation with me regarding the last time we spoke. There's this very interesting topic emerge because we just did like 3 weeks of Qigong practice, dancing Dao together, and we were on this topic of how do we integrate the practice time. Like we probably each have different practice, and different people have different practice, either a mindful meditation, qigong, and how do we integrate that time with the rest of our busy life? That there seems to be this compartmentalization of there'll be time when we are quiet and peaceful and coherent, and then there'll be other time where like jumble around and busy this, busy that. So that's the theme that emerged between us last time.
Yeah, and it reminds me of something I recognized several years ago. I had it's such a cliche word, but kind of had an awakening to what I was up to, like to my structures as a human being, my patterns in some deeper way than I had done it before. And then I recognized that awakening to those patterns was part of the game of being human.
Yeah.
But yet there's this long period of time in which we do things that might awaken us to our patterns, and we collect them like TV shows that we watch, or books that we read, or experiences that we have. We go to amusement parks or museums or whatever, and we can do things as like a collecting, and then at some point all those collections start to take a different meaning in our awareness. And suddenly anything that we do becomes a process, perhaps, of awakening to what we're up to. And what I was really excited about in our prior conversation is like, what helps somebody, what helps me, what helps you, what might help others to make that bridge between doing a practice that in and of itself might be very enjoyable or meaningful in and of itself, but allow it to unfold in our day-to-day life in such a way that's very distinct from it being just a separate practice.
Mm-hmm.
Am I summarizing something that
Yeah.
makes sense for you?
Yeah. One thing I forgot is actually give you a chance to introduce yourself. Because we're doing this the first time. This just shows how we're very rookie about this. So, and we can, yeah. Do you want to say something about what's your interest? What's your passion? How, why, why are you interested in this conversation?
Mm.
Mm.
I was trying to think. I talk about what I do a lot, and I use different ways of describing it
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, at least the last few years. And so I don't have anything clever to say. I'm a storyteller. I'm an internal experimenter, um, uh, and an ally of the soul, of my own soul, and of the soul of others.
Mm.
Feels like what I'm about. And so this idea that practices that help us touch some deeper part of ourselves than we might be aware of in our consensus reality, our conditioned experience of being human,
Mm-hmm.
really lights me up. Like, how do we take those practices and
Mm-hmm.
become more aware of ourselves as what I call a soul, or
Mm-hmm.
something more subtle, or something more great, or something more infinite? We could call it interbeing even.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm interested in
Yeah.
the conversation. But just because this might also be shared with people that know me and don't know you, would you say something about yourself?
Okay. Great. Because we're also experimenting. This is not me interviewing you or you interviewing me, but it's a mutual interview and mutual dialogue. Yeah. I like the way how you introduce yourself. I'm gonna follow your suit, and I see I have like a dancer's soul. I think my primary mode of is it called mode operation?
Modus operandi.
Mode of operandi is an improvisational artist. Yeah, so I follow my intuition, my deepest the part of my impulse that connect with the deeper nature, and try things, experiment with things. And I think also I have the way I make sense of the world is really a poet's mind. I see metaphor and connection in everything can be a metaphor for something else. So in the metaphorical ways, the meaning ripples through beyond the entity of self and connecting with all. So I think that's what is probably it's a different way to saying what you said in the end, the soul, the interbeing, the connection. That's our deeper nature.
Yeah, and I
And
think you and I meet at this level of appreciating symbol as um, not just pointing, to something beyond our current level of consciousness, but it's something beyond our current level of consciousness making itself known.
yeah, yeah,
And so those symbols they come in all kinds of ways. And
yeah,
I appreciate how we both are explorers of that, of metaphor, of symbol.
right, yeah, yeah. And we both bring a feminine touch to it. There's a quality of the yin, the receptive. Yeah.
And this, when you talk about dancer too, and improviser, I totally resonate. It feels like maybe something that unifies what we do is we see living as a kind of art
Right.
form that we're practicing.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I think that's what makes our this topic really jumped out between us. So the practice with, because as an artist, I think all form of artists, they need to practice all the time. No matter you paint, you sing, perform, it's a ongoing practice. And I think the art itself is in the practice itself. So that's why I think for me, I'm very interested in, there are these time I dedicated to practice my connection with this deeper reality or deeper nature of myself, and then how, but I'm not satisfied just to put into a drawer and call it good. It's not one of the drawer. It's actually what's the furniture that holds a lot of drawer? It's the dresser.
Yeah, like a whole dresser, massive.
Yeah, it's a cabinet that holds all my other experience. Yeah. So that's when I was listening to your beginning, I asked that question and you responded, and that's the image come to my mind is we collect these different experiences, and there's a difference of, I do my qigong and meditation or mindfulness practice as one of the drawers versus having it as being the cabinet, the dresser that holds all the drawers.
So I wonder if we maybe start unpacking, would it be helpful, maybe I just say this, would it be helpful to start unpacking how you hold this practice of the dancing Tao? Maybe for those who aren't so familiar with what you're talking about, you could mention something about that, but then how do you hold that practice? So if it's the whole dresser,
yeah,
how does that work for you?
Yeah, okay. Great question. I think I would say there are two main principles. One is noticing that the ebb and flow between stillness and movement. And the second one is noticing the ebb and flow between what's the word? I'd say doing and allowing, or actively pursuing something, or sit back and watching something to unfold, allowing something to unfold, or serving as the container for something to unfold. The doing and the non-doing are another way to think about it. So for me, there are other aspects, but these are the two principal aspects that to come to my mind. So in dancing Tao, we as a qigong practice, we are doing movement that very much weaves from a deep, quiet place, and a movement come out of that, which resolve itself in another quieter, still place, and from there some other movement arise, and the cycle goes on and on. And of course, in 45 minutes, it's a very small dose of it, but then like in the whole the whole rest of the day, I allow myself to go through these cycles. Like just now I worked really, I was doing some computer work, which it generates quite a bit of a frustration energy in me. Is from that striving and shaping things and hard work, and then coming to this call, we actually spend quite a moment to return ourselves back to the stillness, to find that, and which involves some releasing of that frustration energy. But eventually we come to a relative more still and quieter place, and from there we then launch into this another next action. So so it's a for yeah. So that's one example of how I take the principle of dancing down into living.
So there's so many ways we could take this, but I think I'm inclined to just stay with it because I've had Qigong practice over the years, and a little bit of Tai Chi. And for me, it was a very frustrating kind of practice early on that I was trying to get right?
Yeah.
Just trying to do it right.
Yeah.
And what I realized much later is that my knees would hurt a lot, and recognized later what was going on. Like my energy was stopping, the flow of energy was stopping at my knees and not going all the way down through my feet, or coming up through my feet and stopping at my knees and not coming all the way up into my body. But for me, what really made the difference in that was I wasn't getting an invitation from a teacher, instructor, into the more subtle experience of the phenomena. And I don't know if that would have made a difference. I can't say because I didn't have it. Years later, after I had had this experience that I described as a kind of awakening to what I was up to, my capacity to notice subtle energy and to track it, right, and to help it flow, was remarkably different. And so when I came back to a Qigong practice, I was like, oh, like, talk about metaphor or symbol. It is the whole of existence, right? It's going from the ground of being, where all potential is possible, to then a movement arises, right? Something arises organically, it gets followed, and then it kind of follows all the way back. Stillness into the ground of being. I don't know if a teacher had told me that, if I would have experienced it any differently. But can you talk about maybe your journey? Because how did you come to that experience that this is actually a metaphor for my being? This applies. This is the whole cabinet. And all my experiences can fit in it.
I love your story, your journey, because it illustrates kind of, it's almost like our reality has different densities. Like first we recognize the most dense reality. In Qigong we are like, we bend our knees or do this form, hold hands this way or move that way, which is all important, but that's if we stop there, then we miss the whole half other reality, which is more subtle or more invisible, and probably that's why it's harder to perceive. But I think, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I was led to perceive that quite early on in my life, because I was very sick. Because my old cabinet was not working. The dressers are falling apart. I was really sick, and my gross anatomy, my the concreteness of my body was not working very well. That was when I was 14-ish, and so I think noticing, so that helped me to almost forced me to notice a deeper reality. So that's when I first learned the Qigong, which happened to be a Qigong form that without form. The Qigong that without form is called spontaneous Qigong. So which elicit certain spontaneous movement, in that movement, I recognize there's a force in my body that can move itself without the direction of my central nervous system. And I think in Chinese culture, fortunately, there's a cultural container that supports that, which it's also a marginalized part of the culture, because if you look at a bunch of people doing spontaneous qigong in the park, they very much look like a bunch of crazy people. I think that's part of it, is our current culture has very much, I don't know, what's the word, imprisoned our body. We have to move certain way to present as appropriate, culturalized, all these things, which actually inhibits the natural flow, the natural part of me, the wild part of us, was actually very much colonized by this mindset of what should be, or what looks good, or look sexy or popular or whatever. Yeah. So fortunately or unfortunately, I was a very sick child, and which forced me to get access to this subtler nature reality. And but I think even so, I think for the majority of my life, my relationship with qigong was about maintaining wellness. It's about the physical health, which is great. I had that. It was only in the last 7 or 8 years I started to, like you, notice more of beyond the physical aspect, how I conduct my identity in a way that's qigong like. How do I inhabit a social identity that contains this ebb and flow of stillness and movement, this going all out yang and sitting back in. Yeah.
As you're speaking, I'm having a bit of an aha, like how, my early years, when you talk about how we colonize our wild parts, it feels like my whole life has been focused on trying to uncolonize my wild parts, even as I continued to colonize them,
Yeah.
Even as I continued to try and strive and succeed in somebody else's idea of success.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an actor. I studied theater.
Yeah.
I studied music, singing, art, these things that express our wilder parts, still in some perhaps colonized form, but like trying to get at that wildness that gives us permission almost to have the awareness. And so for you, it was the medical situation that catalyzed, getting to that awareness. But yet here we still are colonizing these awarenesses of the subtle energy and the wildness, right?
Yeah.
And yet somehow something happens where we start to move these together, where we give ourselves permission to uncolonize the wild parts, and feel the subtle energies. Or are we feeling the subtle energies and we let ourselves uncolonize the wild part so it has a different meaning to us, rather than, in your case, just wellness or whatever?
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I'm seeing that there's something about the work that both of us do where we're coming at it from, it's not like we do the things exclusively, but maybe I come about it, I'm trying to create situations. So, but you do this too, create situations where the cultural norm allows the wildness to come
Yes, yes, yeah, totally. I was actually just about to respond to what you said. That, we set up this polarity, right? The wild, nature, almost animal, this animated aspect of ourselves, and then there is the cultural norm, the normalized, culturally normalized, and I think what with colonization, it's just means when that relationship is one way, it's just
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
normalized one, it's just completely dominate.
Yeah.
But if it's in a mutual relationship, then sometimes the wild part can serve the normalized, um, to try out to succeed or be a good actor. And in my case, I got all these like doctor degrees behind my name. That's okay. So let's play this part. As long as I can also come out of it and be my wild part without having to be subservient to the normalized culture. So then this relationship becomes mutual. Sometimes you take the lead, sometimes I take the lead, sometimes I follow, sometimes you follow. And again, I think that comes back to that Qigong practice because, like in Dancing Dao, I was talking about sometimes our body leads the arm and sometimes the arm leads the body. How do we experience this ebb and flow, this mutuality between different parts of a whole?
That's beautifully said. Yeah, that's an important distinction because I think also sometimes as people are waking up to how the mind can colonize the body, let's say, we villainize the mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like a colonization has
Yeah.
villainized the
Exactly.
body.
Exactly. Which continues the colonization because it's
Yeah.
still a one-way relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And which is probably a natural phase of the development. But if we stop there, we actually don't go anywhere because sometimes I hear people say, yeah, the vilifying of mind is yeah, if we are unconscious of it, we can be tricked by it. We think we are getting rid of it, but no, we're actually getting even more into it. Yeah. That's the trickster of the mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Mm. So I'm thinking of like still back to this question. What bridges? What bridges? I don't think there's one answer, obviously, right? It's different for every person, but sometimes perhaps a concept unlocks us, like this notion of how colonization is a one-way relationship,
Yeah.
right? It's not a mutuality, it's not a mutual respect and learning from each other.
Right. Yeah.
One part saying, I'm dominant, I have something to teach, and you must follow.
Right.
So that's a concept can unlock us to start to see the metaphors and include a practice into our everyday, enrich our everyday lives, not just the periods of practice. And sometimes it's something in the body that happens, like it's an awareness, something just spontaneously.
Yes.
Have you noticed it with people you work with? Like, have you heard any reports about what helps people bring a practice into their everyday perception?
That's a great question there, and I want to hear from you, your reflection of that question too. There are several factors. Actually, having a community is like seeing. So I'm working a lot with the Chinese community, and I see that having a culture where different people are doing practice that actually cue our unconscious mind that this is something that happens in the environment. I think it's almost like that mirror neuron kind of metaphor that, yeah. Other time, so this is more of, so there, I think there are positive influence, and also there's like my illness, which is a negative, but not like counter force kind of influence. The positive influence is, when someone really get a lot out of dancing, for example, they in a practice, it unlocked something in them, they get a full body experience of this subtle reality or subtle energy. Then there is this great drive to bring that to our aspects of life. And there's the friendship, relationship, community is a huge positive influencer. Yeah, because I believe relationship it's almost like, for example, in the people, kind of a core group in the community in China I work with, we have a group of people coming together to practice this theater form, even though it's on Zoom, but it becomes like a critical component of people's life. It's almost like food we consume. When there's, I really believe like relationship is actually just a nourishing important nutrients in our life that is not substance, but it's really the medium out of which we draw nutrients from. Yeah.
I'm making myself a note because I love that.
Yeah.
Can I build on what you're saying here?
Sure. Yeah, please. I'm curious to hear it from you. Yeah.
Because we could say, this idea of community has multiple aspects to it, because I agree, community, and I've had cohorts of people that are working with me over a couple years doing like a weekly meditation practice, or we're getting together regularly on Zoom and then quarterly in retreats for a year, and having a self-awareness practice, right? And all kinds of different methodologies go into that. And I see that, and it's been true of my own growth, what's consistently supported me is some sense of community. Or those have been important ingredients in my development. At different times that community has looked different. But what I'm recognizing through us talking is that community has multiple aspects. So there is this relational nutrition, kind of as you referenced it, right? That there's something, it's almost like the limbic system, that emotional, relational, limbic part of our brain. It needs this interaction. There's also part of us that is physical, tactile, and it's like, it seems to me like our cells talk to each other. They speak the same language, right?
Right.
So if like my liver cells can talk to your liver cells.
Totally. Yeah. Our immune system can resonate with each other. When there's a rapport.
That's the mirror neuron thing that you were speaking of. But it's like it's whole body, I think. And then there's also this other, we could call it just the energetic field that we create. And we create this at so many different levels. Like we create it as an individual. Like the more I expose myself to ideas, certain kinds of ideas, I'm creating a field, an energetic field of intelligence that I'm swimming in. I can take in that information watching movies or reading books, or connecting with art or whatever. But there's just like a certain level of consciousness I expose myself to. I'm swimming in that energetic field, and then I somehow can assimilate it in my own ways, my own distinct, unique ways. And that can also then happen in small communities. Like we're all swimming in a kind of field, an intelligence, and suddenly something's available If
Mm-hmm.
something's available to you, it's available to me
Mm-hmm.
through that field. And then also very broadly, collectively, like something is happening on the planet right now
Yeah.
with consciousness, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been feeling it for years and now it's undeniable.
Yeah. Right.
Um,
The scale of it,
yeah.
magnitude. Yeah.
Like the YouTube channels of people channeling things and, you know, talking about
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff that wasn't happening 10 years ago.
Totally.
We're in a field where it's like some intelligence gets shared.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that seems to me to be, perhaps that's a way of talking about the most significant way to bridge is creating a field at all these different levels
Right. Right.
of
Yeah.
experience
Yeah. Yeah.
of being. Mm. Yeah. So, and then I think part of what then the colonizing mind, you know, wants to have a formula to help people
Ah,
get
yeah.
somewhere, or to help myself get somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, if
That's
I just
right.
did these 5 simple steps, or
Yes. Yeah.
the 7 surefire practices.
Yeah. 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 Well, you know, like you said, it also, I need to confront with my own colonizing mind all the time, because my mind wants to have a surety of how this plan is going to unfold, especially when we interface with economic structure. That's where the most, I think, probably the most polarizing aspect is, you know, the colonizing mind kind of concretized into this economic structure that requires certainty, and you show off your most the product of the show off the product of the normalized culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how to interface that and not to get swept in and sucked in that machinery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or and suck myself into it, you know.
Yeah.
That self-colonization.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part about I'm just sitting with this recognition that, like, the very act of thinking I have something to share that's important is both, it feels true and altruistic and feels like that's how I'm connected to the whole, and it's hubris, and it
Yes.
limits
Yeah.
me, and it it is the it
Yeah.
can so
Totally.
quickly turn into that colonizing
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah. Very much. Yeah. I have this something that's you know, exceptionally cool and important and valuable to share. So maybe the last because we, you know, it's been a really lively conversation. Maybe the last thing, I think this, what you just said, brought to this question. Maybe we both can share this last question. Like then in your practice, from what place you share with others that feels holistic and more coherent to you?
Mm. I think it's not the sense that I have something special, but that it is all that I have, you know, that really all that I have to give is what comes through me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that it's more important or more special than anything else, but it's what I have.
Yeah.
And this sense, this trust, this lived experience, and then continual trust that it will continue to be this way, that is enough. Like, and that if something comes through me, it means something for me, and it has some value for somebody that's different than the value that it has for me. And the same for you and everybody else on the planet. And I could say it in this kind of cliche way of like, everybody has their own medicine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the medicine serves life.
Yeah.
What's sometimes discouraging is I don't always know who that is or how it will show up. Right. And so there are long stretches where like, okay, why am I carrying this medicine? Where are the people who want this medicine?
Who needs to consume this medicine? Yeah.
And then something will happen that, oh, right, I just showed up because it was mine to do and it served somebody. I get some confirmation of that, and it keeps me going.
When I hear that, I have this visceral, like there's tears churning, there's recognition of something in me, like really like, oh, and it's a place of great vulnerability. And also there's a part of me relaxed because I don't have to prove to like trumping the ground to say this and that. This is just how I am, who I am. This is how I am in my life, and I welcome you to join me if you feel like it.
Yeah. Right.
It's a very like grounded place to be. Yeah.
I once said that really what I'm up to is just collecting playmates on planet Earth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I say that in the most holistic sense of the word, just people that just are really interested in playing life in a really joyful, broad way.
Yeah. Or another way to think another image come to me is like you're reuniting with your soul family coming from the soul tribe,
and maybe even broadening the soul family. You know,
broaden, yes. Reproduce. Yeah. Oh wow.
So did that is there anything else though that you want to add about what because I hear the resonance in you with what I said. Is there something else though specific to how do you approach this idea of sharing what's yours to share?
Well, I think I recognize these two parts of me. There's, there's part of me is trained by this culture to, by golly, my degrees, all these things, it's all about you prove you are exceptional than others. So that condition there, but there's this yearning to just, the way I think about it is, I do dancing Dao every day, and and it would be so joyful for other people to come to do it with me, and all the practice like the theater form, the theater practice, improvisational theater for self-awareness, is something Joe and I do it in our daily life to kind of harmonize the relationship and the small frictions between us. And it's something, there's a joy of pleasure to share something. And that's what I think what, one of the foundations from which I share is just because when you share pleasure, there's more, there's more to share.
Yeah, sharing pleasure is pleasurable.
Share pleasure, it doubles.
It's generative.
Yes. And it's something. I can't say that true for all the things I share, but I want to get to a place where sharing that is effortless. But I can't say that with, the computer work is still takes a lot of effort to edit things. But when it's done from a service, it's an act of love and service. It's okay that that the labor is also can be part of the holistic nature of living.
Spring, thank you for that, and thank you for meeting me here. I don't know if this conversation
Yeah.
will be medicine for anybody else, but it's a good medicine for me today.
Likewise, I think we're practicing what we're saying. This is something we love to do. Yeah, it's enjoyable. It's a we sing and dance together in our playtime, and this is another form of sing and dance, improvise our music of our life's work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
And off it goes to wherever.
Off it goes. Yes. Thank you.